We are just a couple of weeks away from the 2-year mark of Russia's invasion. Give us your sense of where things stand now.
Well, the Ukrainians are very realistic about the prospects of Donald Trump potentially coming back to the White House. This wouldn't be the first time President Zelensky has dealt with Trump. If you remember in 2019, the first impeachment of Donald Trump, President Zelensky was a major actor there. So he understands what it will mean for Ukraine if Trump returns to the White House. And they're preparing for that eventuality if it happens by starting to produce their own weapons and pushing European allies to try to take up the slack if U.S. support continues to decline. But honestly, they need that American support. In all my conversations with them, they say that there is no alternative to American leadership.
According to one assessment, Ukraine only has enough air defenses to last until next month. What happens if those supplies run out before Congress takes action?
I mean, Zelensky has been very clear on that. He said this in one of his most recent visits last year to Capitol Hill. He was asked, what will happen if we don't give you the aid? And Zelensky told them, if America doesn't give us the aid, we will lose the war. I think it is still that stark, but still the Ukrainians are attempting to find other ways, developing their own homegrown air defense systems, looking to the Europeans for donated systems. So they're finding ways to fill the gaps. But again, they need the Americans to come through on this. From my conversations with the Ukrainian leadership, they're still surprisingly optimistic, I think, given how tight the deadlock is on Capitol Hill. They seem to believe that it will come through. Maybe that's naive, but that's where they are.
Well, just this week, the European Union approved a $54 billion aid package for Ukraine. What other options does Ukraine have for financial and military support if the United States doesn't come through? The $54 billion from the EU, where else could money come from?
I mean, great question. One answer to that is, again, domestic production of weapons inside Ukraine. They have been ramping up and reviving a lot of their factories, many of them inherited from the Soviet Union, that have been derelict and mismanaged for many years, but they're now beginning to crank out the kind of weapons that Ukraine needs. But one thing that Zelensky has been asking of Biden is to give Ukraine the licenses, the technology, the blueprints to produce more American weaponry inside Ukraine. That is something that Biden could potentially do without congressional approval. They would still need billions of dollars of aid and financial assistance to kickstart the domestic weapons industry. But I think that is one way that Biden could help potentially without a congressional approval.
I'm curious to get your take on Vladimir Putin's interview with Tucker Carlson. What does Putin hope to accomplish with that?
I mean, I've heard this history lesson. I think it was a surprise to many viewers to hear him rant this way for 40 minutes about ancient history. But this is the speech, the spiel he delivers to so many of his foreign guests. This is the way he, in his mind, justifies the idea that all of Ukraine belongs to Russia. He's trying to deliver that message to the West. I think it showed a lot of just how detached he is from reality. If he understood anything about his audience, he could have talked about, American sort of conservative values to try to appeal to Trump's voter base. But instead, he took us back to the 9th century and the 13th century. I think it shows that he really doesn't have the kind of understanding of the information war and the messaging that is required to get and keep American conservatives on his side. So that's what I took away from it.
Mm-hmm. And I can't let you go. I'm sorry, I should have asked that question last instead of this one, because just this week, President Zelensky made a change at the top of Ukraine's military, removing the general who had been in charge since before the war even began. What does that move signal about the future of this conflict?
Well, it was a long time coming. The tensions between those two men, the president and his top military commander, had been simmering for a long time behind the scenes. I think there's some hope that now that Zelensky has put in place a more a military leadership that he can work with more easily, there may be, it may become easier for him to adjust the strategy to find a new approach to the battlefield that will work better. I think the tensions between the two men were really dragging the country down in terms of finding a new approach and being more nimble on the battlefield. At least that's the hope. I mean, it's still not a good look to dismiss your main military commander in the middle of a war, but I think the tensions between the two men had come to a boiling point, so it needed to happen.